Hi everyone, a couple of weeks ago I made a video about the coining of the word homosexuality in the 1800s, and in it I talk about gathering places for men interested in men in Britain called molly houses. I realized afterwards that I made them sound like they were much more recent than they actually were. So today I wanted to talk briefly about what molly houses actually were, and in addition, when I started research for this episode, I intended to tie the molly house in with the modern gay bar, which is wrong for one pretty major reason. I realized that I had fallen into the trap of mapping out current areas of identity onto a time when they didn't really exist, making the comparison a pretty anachronistic one. What were mollies? Well, molly was originally used as a term for a female prostitute, but became associated with sodomites, or effeminate men who had sex with men. They became part of a subculture in urban areas, gathering in private homes and in taverns called molly houses. Accounts of molly houses make note of ritualized acting out of certain social gatherings, of marriage and of birth, and of some mollies taking on feminine names. Let me read something for you. The women haters, then, take warning by their shame. Your brutal lusts restrain, and own a nobler flame. This piece of justice, then, has well revenged their cause, and shows unnatural lust is cursed without the laws. These are stanzas from the 1707 song, The Woman Hater's Lamentation, which is a morality tale about the trials and deaths of men charged with and convicted of sodomy. These men were tried after soliciting members of an urban religious society for sex. This society, called the Society for the Reformation of Manners, subsequently turned them into authorities. If you remember from our very first video, sodomy was a capital offense in Britain at this time, so it was a big deal to be tried for the crime. Most of the information we have about this subculture comes from trials like this. In 1726, a kind of sting operation by the society resulted in dozens of people being arrested and outed in court documents. These documents served to show what could happen in a molly house. In one of these trials, a man named Samuel Stevens gives the following testimony. Mother Clapp's house was in Field Lane in Holborn. It was next to a bunch of grapes on one side and joined to an arch on the other side. It was notorious for being a molly house. I've been there several times in order to detect those who frequented it. I've seen 20 or 30 of them together, kissing and hugging and making love, as they called it, in a very indecent manner. Then they used to go out by couples into another room, and when they came back, they would tell what they had been doing, which in their dialect they called marrying. So those are molly houses. It may or may not be surprising that in reading about these spaces, I was somewhat reminded of the accounts of the early days of the modern gay bar, which was also a clandestine meeting space, and was often under a threat of raid by authorities. But the 18th century molly is not analogous to the 20th century gay man, even if we think they sound the same. Just like today, we should hesitate to label anyone else's identity, and given that we have only bits and pieces of any historical figures in our life, I wouldn't even venture a guess. What that means, though, is that we will have a separate episode on modern gay bars, and on TBLG resistance that came out of them. Let us know what you think in the comments. We list some resources in the description, and there's a link to the transcript there as well. You can follow me on Twitter, you can follow the show on Tumblr, and don't forget to subscribe using the handy button. See you next time.